Hello, and welcome to the Comic Book Communicast, the official podcast of the Google Plus comic book community. This is a giant size issue number 4 for the week of September 25th, 2013, and also National Comic Book Day. I'm Justin Beeson, and I'm joined by Paul Christopher.
Hello.
And our brand new co-host, Sarah Evans.
Hi.
And this week we are also joined by special guest Aaron Travis.
Hello.
Each episode we take a look at a few comics from this week that we couldn't wait to read first, as well as talk about last week's Community Pick of the Week and other content that generated discussion. In addition, after our normal discussion today, we'll be going into back issues and talking about the Fall of Cthulu Volume 1. So let's start right off with our picks for this week. Paul, what was your comic?
Fatale, number 17. I have been waiting for this to come around so we could talk about this, because this is like one of the best comics currently out there right now. Everybody talks about Saga, which also came out, which is also stupid awesome, but Fatale, if I had to pick one, that one wins every time. The story is awesome. It's like this noir, Cthulhu, detective, mystery thing going on. The art is great for the book. The writing is just superb. It's Ed Brubaker. If you're familiar with his stuff, you know it's always really good, like dirty noir crime stuff. And this just happens to have like some Cthulhu mythos thrown in for good measure.
Yeah, I actually picked this one up. I'd never read anything before, and kind of went right in the middle of it, and I had no problem. Like, I didn't, know all of what was going on, but it was definitely compelling, and like there was kind of like two different A and B story going, and I was able to follow along, and it had me wanting to read some more.
Basically, what it is the Fatale. It's like femme fatale. The woman who's the center of this story has power over men. Like, as soon as they instantly fall in love with her, and they'll do whatever she wants. And she's on the run from these weird men in black suits, cultist types. Cool. She doesn't know where the power came from or anything like that. So, Fatale, go get it.
Nice. All right, Sarah, what was your pick this week?
Well, I this week more or less the only thing in my pull box was Young Avengers issue 10, and the story it was very much a talking issue. There was a lot of speech bubbles, a lot of exposition, people meeting to discuss their evil plans or counter evil plans, and yes, but it looks like we saw a little bit of plot momentum towards the end. The villain has not really done so much lately. This is part of the talking heavy problem. Because, I mean, they're effectively in a stalemate right now with the team and this creature who can only affect them if they come within a certain radius. So, I mean, this has been happening for the past 10 issues. Easy answer, stay outside the radius. They keep dimension hopping. And it looks like the big bad might have gained a little bit of ground towards the end. And also, surprise, Kid Loki is a little punk. I mean, who saw that coming, right? So...
Yeah, actually, I read this one, and his dialogue with him and I assume the bad guy was awesome.
The mother?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Like the verbal sparring that they had going on was really good.
Definitely. Love it when villains monologue at each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we could pretty much anticipate Loki working towards his own motives. It was the interference of kind of a third-party villain, or villains, plural, that got me interested, because it looks like that might switch up the game a little bit between this basically tag thing that's been going on between the heroes and the only villain so far, because it looks like we've got a whole bunch of other teenagers waiting in the wings to kind of take on the Young Avengers, and who knows, they might christen themselves the Dark Young Avengers for the sake of tradition, but we'll have to find out about that.
So is this like the Avengers as children, or is this like Avengers version of like New Mutants?
More or less the latter. It's been going on for a good few years, actually. The team is basically comprised of Kate Bishop, the new Hawkeye, or the I don't know, the second Hawkeye. I think they're both using the name right now, but they have a really cute relationship. There's no rivalry there. And Wiccan and Hulkling actually in a relationship, and that relationship has pretty much been the focus of this comic book so far. I mean, the plot has really, really been pushing that. And I think that they realized that they have a lot of fans who really like this couple together, and so that's part of what they're doing. So there's been some drama there these past couple issues, but other than that, let's see. The team has switched up a little since this new series started. There's just been 10 out so far, I mean, obviously. But you've got Novar, Marvel Boy, who else? Miss America, who has been kicking butt so far. Very awesome to see a young female teenage superhero of color in that capacity. And yeah, it's basically a bunch of teenagers, not so much modeling themselves after the Avengers, though that's how they got their name, but definitely operating within the same circles.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. Aaron, what was your pick?
I picked Batman 23.4, which was Bane. Woo! I got to my local shop at like noon, and they had sold out of it already, which was pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is nuts.
I wasn't really expecting too much out of the whole thing. And it kind of lived up to my expectations. It was basically just this kind of setup for Arkham War, just a lot of blah blah blah, and trying to give him a little bit of a backstory, which I thought was actually pretty freaking weak. It started out with him beating the crap out of some people, and then this girl comes up and he says, "Well, did you bring your daughter here to, keep me from beating you up," or something along those lines? And she said, "No, I'm here to watch," which started trying to make him as some kind of like anti-hero thing, and it was just so half-assed and weak, and it was really not consistent, and it wasn't compelling, but I did actually get pretty interested in the whole Arkham War thing. The last like 2 panels really kind of made it for me. So
yeah, that part does sound
it was kind of
interesting.
meh.
The part that like kind of struck me was the Bane's dialogue was just super cheesy, just over the top like villain dialogue.
Well, there were the parts where he was being the Order over the crowd. It made sense because of they were trying to make him this kind of like S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of character, but that beat the crap out of people. But he was so inconsistent, and it didn't fit with the actions. They should have either gone one way or the other, and I think trying to mix the two was just really inconsistent and pretty bad writing.
Which is surprising.
It was just really filler.
Yeah, Tomasi's usually pretty good. I usually like his writing. The other thing that struck me about that one is that when he's kind of recapping his history, he talks about going to Gotham and sparring against Gotham's protector and getting defeated again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
So no mention of the first time you faced him and you kicked his butt.
No, he mentioned that. He said he was the only one that was able. He was the only one that was able to break him. There was one line that he said that.
Okay, see, I thought he was talking about somebody else.
It was in the beginning.
Okay.
No, it was in the beginning. It was before because they tried to do it this really like old style like socialist kind of imagery and tone with it. Kind of like harkening back to like the Red Scare kind of days or like Cold War kind of days.
Right.
And before all that, he said that. It was kind of his lead-in. He was going to the place to where something along the lines of he broke this guy who had never been broken or what have you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So they led up to it. It was just very inconsistent. The idea was cool, but I think it was just something that was put in there as filler, kind of to set this up and to, say, hey, buy my comic because it's Bane.
Yeah, that seems to be what I'd say at least 3/4 of all the villain books are.
Yeah, can I just say
like
this whole thing has been way, way too expensive.
Definitely.
Yeah, I only bought half of my comics, my pull this week, because it would have been like $50. I was just like, no.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I'm a sucker, and I gave in. And
I'll get them. I'll just get them next week.
Well, I had to get in there and get those 3D covers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got 5 comics this week because there's a few. We'll go over that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But my
Now,
pick was go ahead.
Sorry, were these the covers of which they didn't print enough, or
Yeah,
did you order
nope.
them ahead of time?
Oh, I went ahead of time, and my comic shop that I go to is big enough that like they had enough for all the people that actually reserved them ahead of time, so
Oh,
that wasn't
awesome.
an issue. Yeah, but I mean, if like because I usually get there around 6:30, 7 o'clock, and every week they've only had the Batman ones because they've gotten probably 3 times as many Batman covers as any of the other ones. But yeah, so they go quick.
Yeah,
So I'll have
when I went into my shop, there were I think they had the Parasite ones left. Everything else they said sold by 10, and they had just sold the last. They had sold the last Bane one. Probably, I think it was the guy that came in before me. I was honestly thinking about following him and mugging him, but I was on my lunch break, so I didn't really have time for that. So
It's not the holiday season yet. Give it a few months.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna hold on to mine for a couple months and then sell them, see if I can make some money on them.
No, I did hear from the comic shop owner. Apparently, the Joker's daughter issues are going for like 100 on eBay already.
Yeah, well, yeah, they've been going like that for I think 2 weeks because some people got them ahead of time, and it's just nuts.
It's ridiculous. It's the 90s all over again.
And
DC would like that.
I didn't read that one yet, but I mean, it's written by Ann Nocenti, who I'm not a huge fan of. She's the Catwoman writer, so.
She also did that run on Daredevil, though, didn't she? It was pretty well received.
Yeah, but like her recent stuff hasn't been that great.
Okay.
All right, so my comic this week is Mind Management number 15. Are you guys familiar with that one at all?
I've seen it. I've heard other people talking about it in the community, but I've not read it myself.
Oh, man, it's awesome. So it's by Matt Kent, who, I mean, if you haven't seen his name this month, which he's been on like 3 Villain Months book, Infinity Hunt. Next month he's doing like Unity for Valiant, and he's got 3 other books. The guy's he's doing so many books right now, but this is like his main book, and it's basically it's like a suspense mystery type thing, and the premise is that like the government had an agency of special ops people that all had like mind related powers, whether it was like suggestion or telekinesis or all kinds of stuff. But they broke up, and Mind Management follows this author who's trying to write a book about them. And so they're on issue 15, so the first arc was her finding these people, the second arc was her running from these people, and there was this big conflict. And this is one of those books where you can't talk about it too much, otherwise it's spoilery. But right now they're doing like kind of like character focused issues. So this issue was really cool because it was focused on the guy that's like kind of like the main mystery man in the series, and it filled in some backstory. And this book is just it's amazing. Everything about it is deliberate. Matt Kent writes and draws it, so it's kind of like it's a little bit looser art style, and it's a watercolor, but he draws it. He prints it on what looks like a comic page, like what an artist would actually draw on. So there's like grid lines on some of them, and then he also uses the margins to like enhance the story. So it's either like the first arc in the margins, it was selections from the main character. Her name's Mara. The main character's novel, and whatever was happening on panel, the text on the side would kind of like enhance it. It's just really cool, and it does some really cool storytelling things. And like the back of the book has ads in it. Some of them are real, and then some of them are something related to the story. And he's hidden codes in there for people to try and find. It's awesome, and I mean I'd recommend it to anybody.
It sounds like
Lost.
Lost.
Kind of losty, yeah.
Yeah, no, it totally is. It's kind of like Lost and Memento mixed together.
And you said Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, just it's Lost and Memento mixed together, but with less plot holes.
Yeah, you said that there was a website that's like tracking all the stuff for you. So.
Yep. Yeah, there's a website which I love called multiversitycomics.com. They have some really great editorial stuff, but they do these annotated columns for this book and like Morning Glories and East of West and Mind the Gap. kind of those more heavy comics that you have to think about, and it's you read it and then they'll go and they'll show you, if this issue referenced something from issue 3, they'll point it out so you can make the connection, and kind of they'll talk about maybe some of the themes that are developing. It's a really cool tool, and I definitely recommend anybody check that site out.
Awesome.
And I mean, I post about it.
If I start picking up that book, then I'll definitely go to the site so I can make sure I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, it's a definite help, because sometimes you feel a little lost, and then you realize, Matt Kent has had this covered, but he's referencing a comic from 6 issues ago or whatever. But yeah,
Cool.
definite recommendation. So Paul, what else did you have on your pull list this week?
Okay, so like I said, I could only get half, so what I did was I went with the indie half, because I've already bought like 6 issues of all the back titles already. So I got Fatale, I got Pirate Eye, which is really cool. Each comic is like, it's on its 3rd issue, but like each one is a standalone story, and it's hard-boiled noir detective pirate story. It doesn't sound like it should fit, but it really does. It really fits well. It is really well written by Josiah Gran, and I met the artist Carl Yonder at Baltimore Comic Con, and he was really cool to talk to. It's a great book. It's by Action Lab. I don't know if they do anything else but this book, but yeah, definitely look it up, give it a try. I think this issue is only like 99 cents, like on sale in Comixology, so go get it.
Cool.
And then Revival. I mean, this week was the week for all the awesome indie comics that I want to talk about eventually. Revival, if you're not reading it, it's like people come back from the dead in this little town, but they're not zombies, and there's like all this mystery surrounding it, and the town's been quarantined and all this stuff. It's a very, very cool comic from Image. Saga. I mean, if I have to tell you about Saga, you have not been paying attention.
Yeah, everybody's pretty much been screaming about that book for the last year and a half.
And, and for good reason, too, man. That is such a great book. Great art, great writing, great characters, great book. East of West, number 6. Another fantastic book. It's just, I can't say enough good things about that. Also on Image, that is just, it's an incredible book. That needs to be a movie soon. And the only superhero book I got was Aquaman 23.2 Ocean Master. And that was good. I mean, the Aquaman team is good.
Cool. And Aaron is not a usual weekly collector, so Bane was it for you, right?
And Aaron's muted.
Yeah, for new stuff, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Stuff, yeah.
And Sarah, what else did you get this week?
Well, A+X looked really enticing on the shelf, Wonder Man and Beast, and I don't know much about either of these characters except that, I don't know, Beast, they Dazzler temporarily. This is the extent of my knowledge on this character. I'm really out of the loop if I'm pulling references from the 80s.
Youngins.
Yeah, sorry. But it was really adorable. There's almost nothing I love more than superheroes hanging out together in between punching faces and blowing things up. So it was basically them having a bros night, and it was really great. It was adorable. You get some Captain America and Jubilee hanging out in this issue as well, which is not something that you expect to see for a team up.
Yeah.
But
Sarah
it was
said the
actually
J
really
word.
entertaining. They fought. I'm telling you, it was actually pretty good. They fought vampire Nazis.
That sounds
That kind of worked out
perfect
for both of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds like a perfect team up.
Yeah.
All right.
Right?
So
He actually asked her along on that. And picked up a couple of the Red Sonja variant covers for the latest issue as well. That's been out for a couple weeks. But
the Simone run.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's been pretty good so far. And so far, I just have the Pia Guerra and the Stephanie Buscema art so far. But the cover art has definitely been amazing for this series. I love the project they have going on with the female creators. So trying to grab up as many of the variants as possible.
Ah, nice. All right, so my pull list, I broke the bank this week. I went out, ended Villains Month with a bang, so I'm just going to fire them off. I got Avengers 20, Batman 23.4 Bane, Batman and Robin 23.4 Killer Croc, Batman Superman 3.1 Doomsday, which I'm looking forward to reading only because that whole area of the New 52 is a little fuzzy. You know, all Superman's death, Coast City being destroyed, whether Mongol and Cyborg Superman were involved still. So I'll be curious to see what they do with Doomsday. And I think Greg Pak's going to be handling that in Batman Superman, the regular one. And then Green Lantern 23.4 Sinestro, which is by Matt Kent again. Guardians of the Galaxy 6, Mind Management 15, Saga 14, Superior Spider-Man Team Up 3, Superman 23.4 Parasite, Ninja Turtles 26, The Wake, which I really can't wait to read. That was a close one for my pick. Wolverine and the X-Men 36, and Wonder Woman 23.2 Firstborn.
I'm glad you mentioned The Wake because I forgot. That's actually in my poll too. I completely forgot. I haven't read it yet. So that's awesome. Now I'm all excited.
That's one of those books that I need to I sit down and I was reading it digitally at first, but then I went and I started looking at it. I was like, no, I need to read this physically because the art is just crazy. So this is one of the ones where I'll sit at my dining room table, lay it out, and take each page in, one by one, and take my time with it because it's amazing.
Have you put the issues together? Because the covers seem to create one big picture.
Oh no, I had no idea.
Yes, lay them out flat together, and it looks like just looking at them in the Comixology app. I know, the first two definitely, you see the tail of the shark on the beginning of the first issue, and the rest of them on the second issue. So I think they all go together.
Oh, nice. All right, so that's it for this week's comics. Next, we're gonna go over last week's pick of the week, which once again is a Marvel book.
I'm out.
Paul is out. I'll just go over this briefly because, if you're reading Marvel, you're probably reading this. It's Infinity number 3, which is kind of the midway point in the big event, and this was it was an awesome issue. Issue 2 kind of dragged a little bit because he was doing a lot of recap from the tie-ins. This one is just into it. There's a lot of action, and the end of it is an event that is definitely a turning point for it and for the whole Marvel universe. If you read about where they're going after this event, it starts in this issue, and it's really great. Hickman is doing an awesome job with this, but also, if you're doing the event, you really need to be reading New Avengers and Avengers 2, even though they're technically tie-ins. So yeah, that was last week's pick of the week. So this week is Banned Books Week, which we've been kind of posting about in the Google Plus community, and there's been a bunch of stuff going around. If you're not familiar with it, it's a week where libraries, literary companies, everything celebrates books that have been challenged or banned, in schools and libraries and things. And it's especially relevant to comics because people love to protest comics. So we're going to talk about, each one of us, one of our, favorite books out of that have gotten banned. The Comic Book Legal Defense Fund posts a list every year of the most common ones. I posted a link in the show notes. You can go look at it. Sarah, I heard, has an interesting story about this, so why don't you go ahead and start with yours?
All right. Well, it's definitely not my favorite on the list, but the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the Black Dossier trade, the drama with that in Jessamine County, Kentucky, that was actually right next door to where I was going to college at the time, and my mother was assistant manager at a Louisville library, so she got all of the drama from that, and it was a pretty big fuss. There were a few predictable people in the community who came out to support the library assistants who were acting outside library policy, trying to get the book pulled after it had already been approved by the powers that be. Just taking it upon themselves to say, hey, we're going to keep this off the shelves on our own time, which violates everything in the Library Bill of Rights. So that was, you had a few more prudent members of the community coming out in support of that. I think it actually got put up to a library board at one point after it had been discovered what the library assistants had been doing. But I think we all know how that ended. It's pretty much documented on the, or whenever this book being banned is discussed, they were dismissed, which would have been the right move. It was the only thing that the system could have done at that time because the library assistants were just so out of line. But I don't know, I went to a local library today to pick this up just for a refresher, and they definitely had it on display with the banned books and the Necronomicon and everything else that they're highlighting this week. And that was out in Annapolis. But just refreshing, Alan Moore, whenever you see a list of banned comic books, his name's going to pop up at least a few times.
Yeah, he loves that list.
Definitely. The thing that the library assistants had difficulty with accepting in this book, they viewed it as pornography, was the sex scenes. And honestly, for an Alan Moore book, it was surprisingly tame because they happened frequently and pretty graphically, but most of the scenes were consensual, and it was actually described in pretty tame but liberating detail for the females involved. I think the woman in this book was having sex at some point, so I can definitely see how.
I think he saved all. I think he saved all the stuff that he didn't use in that book for Aaron's book.
Yeah, from what I hear about that.
Probably. Yeah. I can't wait till we get to yours because I flipped through it real quick and I couldn't make it through. It was a little too graphic for me, so I'm glad you're covering it.
All right, well, with that, Aaron, tell us about your book. I'm curious to hear about this one.
All right. Well, I did Neonomicon, which is an Alan Moore book. I hadn't read it before, actually. I was actually talking about doing Killing Joke, but that's going to be covered by somebody else. But this was good. It was actually really good. I hadn't read it before. It was a really good story. It's just I'm not going to get into the plot too much because that's really not what it's about. It was just a story about the actual events that Lovecraft stories were based off of. And the interesting thing about it was this was pulled from I'm trying to look up where it was from a Greenville library, I guess. Where is Greenville? South Carolina. Because a mother let her daughter, her 13-year-old daughter, check this book out. It was in the adult section, which she figured since it was a comic it would be teen friendly. She said she thumbed through it and she thought it was a murder mystery. Okay, so here's this actually speaks to one of Alan Moore's more famous rants about censorship and how parents should actually take a little bit bigger role in figuring out what their kids read. So this book, let me see here. This book we'll just say starting with the second issue. The second issue's cover is, I'm trying to get to it here. Give me 1 second. Got to dig through and find it. It's a bloody bed with a pentagram painted in blood on it. Let's see.
And the parent missed that. Oh, here, let me put it. Oh, it's a little. You can't see the pentagram, but
it didn't.
Yeah. But either way,
it doesn't format the same way. Either way, it's a freaking bloody mess. It's a freaking bloody mess. So there's that. Then the entire second issue, not part of it, the entire second issue is a violent, bisexual rape orgy, getting this fever to call it a deep one. And then the first half of the second issue or the third issue, by the way, there are 4. The first half of the third issue is the deep one coming and raping the living heck out of one of the main characters. And it's I don't know what she thumbed through, but a third of the trade paperback was orgy and rape. And if it wasn't that, it was blood. Okay, it was, and I mean, and one of the other main characters had a swastika carved in his forehead. I don't know what this woman was thinking, and it totally gives credence to Alan Moore's rant about parents parenting their children as opposed to expecting the comic book industry to. I mean, because obviously she was just full of crap and looked at the first 2 pages. I mean, it was good. If you're over the age of 18, considering the content, and it is up there with anything you find in Hustler, I totally recommend reading it. But, yeah.
Okay.
Trigger warning. It should come with a trigger warning.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the trigger warning is easy. It's Alan Moore.
Alan Moore.
Yeah, that's
right. All right, and continue with Alan Moore trend. Paul, what's your book?
My book is Killing Joke. Was that Alan Moore too, or Ryan Bullen? Yeah, he wrote it. That's right.
Would not be surprised.
It's all okay, yeah.
That one's notorious because it has like one of the largest scripts in comics.
Yeah, Killing Joke was awesome. I read it when it first came out. It really is one of the first comics that like really opened my eyes to like how mature and adult comics could be. I was really surprised because like nudity in there, and but I mean I wouldn't have a problem giving it to like my 13-year-old to read. But you know, and I talked to Boland at Baltimore Comic Con. And it was just the art. The art is great. It's really, I wouldn't give it to like I wouldn't give it to like an 8-year-old, 10-year-old, but a 13-year-old it's fine for. So I don't understand why they want to be pulling this stuff off the shelves. It's got an adult story, but overall it's pretty tame as far as like art goes. There's not like sex scenes or whatever. For those who aren't aware, this is where how Barbara Gordon ended up in her wheelchair as Oracle for a while. And it also has, in my mind, the definitive Joker origin, even though Joker himself says that it's like sometimes he remembers it one way, sometimes he remembers it another. But, for me, like that's the Joker origin.
Yeah. Definitely.
Wasn't that really one of the first times that the Joker wasn't really just some cartoony guy as well? It was the first time he was actually a real villain versus.
Yeah, it was basically Joker's Dark Knight. Where they really redefined Joker for a new century.
They've always had a problem with that with Batman because they always want to make him kid friendly because it's Batman, it's the Batman. He's always been something that you want to have all ages, but then when you have him written correctly, like Killing Joke or like Arkham Asylum, they have a huge problem with it because what if the kids read it, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, his villains are definitely adult.
Yeah. Especially, with Joker in there. The whole thing is Joker is trying to drive Commissioner Gordon crazy because he wants to prove that anybody can go insane after having one bad day.
Right. All right. Well,
as an aside, that was one reason why I didn't like the second Batman movie.
All right. So I'm going to break the trend here. And for my book that I'm choosing to talk about, I'm going to talk about Sandman. Because while it's not my favorite comic book series, it's my favorite work of fiction. The whole thing together, it's kind of like the whole thing is just a celebration of storytelling, which is kind of what Neil Gaiman does best. And this was pulled because it had anti-family themes, offensive language, and unsuited for the age group because it was in the young adult section. Which it is young adult. But the one that cracks me up is the anti-family themes because it's the complete opposite that. I feel like Sandman had I know, Paul, you said you've read some of it. Aaron and Sarah, have you guys read through it?
I've definitely
read the first couple trades.
Okay. Yeah, well,
I only know about the more transphobic themes in it. That's part of the reason why I haven't read further. I know that it has its good parts and its bad parts.
Yeah, you have to judge it as a whole. You have to read everything because it's all one big picture. But the one thing is it's not anti-family because I feel like it celebrates family, just kind of alternate families, not by blood. You know,
Yeah,
the
it seems like
family.
very chosen family.
It's kind of like it's more about celebrating the family that you find yourself with, not that you're stuck with. And you know, of course, like every other thing, it gets upturned. But it's definitely something that anybody that likes comics should read. For sure, it's one of the best things out there.
It's right up there with Watchmen as like a seminal comic book work. You know,
Yeah.
It's like if you're serious about comics, this is one of the ones that you have to have read.
Right, and it's just a little harder because there's 75 issues and a few specials and everything.
Yeah.
All right, so that about does it for banned books and our regular segment. And so now we're going into the giant-sized part of our podcast, which is the back issue segment. And so occasionally we'll be doing these, maybe not on any regular basis, but when we feel like it, when we have something to talk about. And when I proposed the idea, I asked Paul about it, and I said, all right, so let's do a back issues. What do you want to do? And he immediately says, Fall of Cthulhu. So,
Yes.
Paul, why did you choose that so quickly?
I chose that so quickly because it is just an incredible work. It is absolutely like I'm a big Cthulhu fan, as you can tell from my tag there. This it is like the best Cthulhu story I have ever read outside of Lovecraft's own work. It's spot on. It's a great comic. It's incredible, and like if I had to pick one, that's what I wanted to talk about.
Okay, and so you knew about the Cthulhu mythology. What, Aaron and Sarah, what's your guys' background with this subject?
I'm a huge fan. I mean, I've been a huge fan since I was a kid. I will get into anything Cthulhu or Lovecraftian. Big fan.
Yeah, I was like 2 issues into this, and I went to Aaron. I was like, "You have to read this. You must read this."
Yeah.
And Sarah, were you able to read any of it?
I did not so much. I am not as much a fan of the Cthulhu mythos or of Lovecraft himself, although some of the themes and the works he created definitely, I suppose Lovecraftian is the term by now, since he's basically the definitive writer of that kind of genre.
Yeah.
All I know is I have a little plush Cthulhu sitting in the back window of my car that
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah,
to deter breakers in.
Nice. Yeah, I went in completely cold to this. I'm not familiar with it at all. The most I know about Cthulhu is that episode of South Park where Cartman summons him.
Yeah.
That one's pretty good, though. That is really good.
Yeah, it is. Now, the writer, I wasn't familiar with him until I went back and looked, and it's Michael Allen Nelson, and realized he actually did one of my favorite new books in the last few months, which was Daymen from Boom, which was that vampire book where it's like, each vampire has like a family, but they have these mortals that go around as their like liaisons, and it was actually really cool. So I saw that and I was pretty excited.
Yeah, the writing in here is excellent. I mean, like again, if you're not familiar with the mythos, you'll be able to enjoy this as a straight horror comic. And he did a fantastic job of writing. It feels very much organically Lovecraftian. It feels like it could have been written by Lovecraft himself.
Okay, so before we get into all that, like, what happened? So we're specifically going over Volume 1. Give us a quick plot synopsis of what happens in Volume 1.
Yeah.
And this, normally we don't do spoilers, but since it's back issues and it's been out for a while, spoiler territory. So if you don't want anything ruined, which there isn't anything like really, whatever, just pause it, come back and listen to it after you read it.
Yeah, there's 6 volumes, and so the first one is called The Fugue. It gets us started off, like you said. The writer is Michael Allen Nelson. The artist for this one, there's two. There's Gene Dieslowski,
Yeah, I couldn't figure out
yeah, she does the art for the like the waking period. Half of this book, you have to understand, takes place in the Dreamlands, and the Dreamland artist is Andrew Ritchie, and his art for the Dreamlands is sufficiently trippy.
He also comes back later as the solo artist for future issues and future volumes. So the art itself is kind of foreshadowing.
Yeah, oh, cool. Yeah, I love when they do that, when they switch the artist when they're on different, when they're trying to communicate different things. So anyways, so what happens in the book?
All right, so the prologue, it starts out with Abdul al-Hazred. Abdul al-Hazred, the mad Arab who wrote the Necronomicon, and he is in the middle of writing the Necronomicon. He summons this, you don't want to say demon because there's not really demons in the Cthulhu mythology. He summons something. And it's like, is it time? He says, no, it's not time. And then he gets dragged into the dream realm, and but he doesn't know why. And then he wakes up, and he's like in prison, and like they bury him alive. But then like this god, Cthulhu type god, shows up and rescues him, and then it's all kind of like it's hard to understand what's going on, and it's meant to be that way. It's supposed to like open all these questions in your head, like what is happening, and then that's like 731 AD in Damascus, and then it jumps to the present in the U.S. and they're like fishing him out of a swamp and resurrecting him. And that's the prologue. That's the part that you had trouble with.
Yeah, and when I talked to you guys, I said, I'm not getting this prologue. It's a little weird. But then, when you get to the last issues, and then you're like, oh, okay, that's why we did that.
And not only that, it is pretty circular. It's not a spoiler for the series to say that it's pretty circular.
Yeah, well, and you know what that prologue reminded me of? It was very Shakespearean, because you had this kind of like minor character doing this monologue of narration, kind of putting you into the setting and stuff. And it just reminded me of a lot of Shakespeare plays where he does that, and he sets up the characters and how this is kind of going to play out.
Well, El-Hazred in the Cthulhu mythos is actually analogous. His place is very analogous to like Muhammad. He's the one who wrote the holy books he's the one who wrote the Necronomicon. He wrote the Bible. So that's his place in the in Lovecraftian mythology. He came off as a minor character in this, but he's not. He's
going to
the
play
mad
a
Arab
bigger role.
is like, yeah. I mean, he's mentioned a little bit more, and like I said, it is circular in other volumes. But from the source material, he is the one who wrote the holy book.
Gotcha.
So I mean, they don't assume knowledge in these, which is good, because there's a lot of stuff that if you knew it, it would flesh out a lot of those details, like that one. But it doesn't assume that knowledge, and I don't think if you don't have the knowledge, it doesn't give it the breadth of kind of interest, because I thought it was really cool to see that. It was cool to see the Mad Arab doing his thing and going through all the stuff he went to through issue 0. But I mean, if not, it's a good prologue.
Yeah, definitely. So after the prologue, we're thrown into present day.
Yes. Like most Lovecraft stories, this one involves a young man who is somehow dragged into investigating one of his forebears. In this case, his uncle. His uncle shows up while he's having lunch with his girlfriend and promptly kills himself, and leaves all of his research, because his uncle had been doing research in South America, and leaves this big bag full of his research with his nephew. And his nephew, again, like your typical Lovecraft character, starts getting drawn into this research, and basically digging into forbidden knowledge and completely unaware of the danger gathering around him. It's like we as the readers understand, like, the further he goes, the more dangerous it gets, but he is completely oblivious to it until it's too late.
All right, and since we are going to spoilers, I want to talk about the end of this thing, because, we're a little jaded with this in the era of, Game of Thrones television, but that last issue, after he goes through all this stuff, and then he follows the same path as his uncle.
Yep. Yeah.
The thing about that is, though, is this is volume 1 of
right. Yeah, and
effectively 5, because 6 is epilogue. 6 is different.
Yeah,
but this is just the beginning.
Well, and I definitely expect that, because the whole thing is dealing with people resurrecting. But when you finish this first volume and what your supposed main character is dead. And when this started, that wasn't the norm. But I love stories where it's a capper like that, where your main character is not where you expect him to be at the end.
Well, all your suppositions are thrown out, basically.
Right. He wasn't dead, and this is one of those things where if you're used to the whole pacing and the whole concept behind the Lovecraftian junk, you understand that it's like, okay, so he just saw they're framing it as madness, but it's reality. And when the reality comes over the madness, then it just starts to be really interesting. And they just hit that at the end of volume 1. So you don't really get plunged into that yet, because you have 3 more volumes where everything that was crazy throughout this volume is reality. And it's just, that's so much fun. And I think how they broke from crazy to reality in like half of an issue was brilliant. It was so good, so well done.
Yeah, and and it kind of builds toward that with him going to the Dreamlands frequently, and I love the character. Do they just call her the Harlot in that, or does she have
Yeah, she's the Harlot.
Yeah, she was created for the series.
Okay.
But she fits right in.
Yeah, her character
totally.
Is
completely Lovecraftian. Awesome. Yeah, she was great. I reread it today, and it just flooded back to me how great of a character she was, how great the whole Dreamlands thing was. It was phenomenal. So good.
And can I just put in a word for the cover art? The cover art on this were phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Well, and there's a whole. I saw there's a ton of variants. Like when I'm looking it up on online, and then on Comixology, there's like a ton of different variants, and they're all really good. I think the art in general on this book is really good and a really important part of it. Like you mentioned before, the dual things. So when we're in reality, it's one style, and it's very it's dark, it's high contrast, and it's a lot of shadows and kind of earthy tones. And then when you get to the Dreamland, it's and the art, there's not a lot of strong lines because it kind of blends in the shadow. But then when you get to the Dreamland, it's psychedelic. There's saturated colors, there's strong line work, and it really helps the story by illustrating like the difference in how the main character is feeling. Because when he's in the Dreamland, he's like, that's when he's actually learning things, and then when he's in reality, it's just kind of getting more numb as the story goes on, because he's fallen into this rabbit hole of the mystery of the Cthulhu and following what his uncle is doing.
Yeah, and the Dreamlands are really just kind of they're kind of like they're the reality on top of reality, So it's like this. It's kind of a Buddhist kind of a thing where the real world, the world that we think is real, is perception and really not true, and then you go into the Dreamlands and that's reality. So.
And the other thing about this book, the whole series, is like you can tell, as we've talked about, it's like they really took their time, and this feels like just like an event. You know what I mean? It's like they took their time. Like nothing was, no corners were cut. Like they got the right artist, the right writers. They had the right concept. It was very tight. The whole execution for this series is very, very tight. I don't know how to explain it. It's just it feels like it rises above just normal works. It isn't just good; it's excellent.
So you feel like he had kind of the whole series planned out beforehand?
Yeah, and it's just and the way they did everything, like the way like we were talking about how they split up the different art, and the excellent covers, and just it feels monumental. The whole thing just feels really solid. It feels very monumental to me.
All right. Now, you said, does the artist the same throughout the whole series? I mean, besides when you said they switched, but like, do
No.
they keep consistent art? No, so they kind of switch around.
Yeah, like I think it's like each volume has its own. Let me see. We got volume 2 right here. I think
the Gray Man was different art than anything else. I think because if
Yeah.
I remember, that was more standard comic book art.
Yeah, like
versus, the other two.
the
That was the one that I remember.
Yeah, the second volume is in 5 parts, and each part has a different artist.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah.
Cool. So now, what would people expect from the rest of the series?
I don't know. It's a really detailed look at Descent into Madness. Was it cosmic horror? It's just I don't know how to explain it. It's Aaron. Help me out here.
Well, here's the thing about that. So it's a good series. There's 6 parts to it. They're all solid except for 2. One of which is the ending, and I'm not going to spoil it. Don't worry, I won't spoil it. I'm just going to say the ending makes. If you've ever seen Millennium, the ending is very similar. It's not similar, but it made me feel very similar to the third season of that, or the ending of Lost, or whatever. It was very anticlimactic. They just did this entire series. They get the point so well. It's just if you're a Lovecraft fan, you will just love it. It's these comics are like finding Stuart Gordon. He was the guy that did the Reanimator, Dagon. He's the only good Cthulhu filmmaker. The only good Lovecraftian filmmaker. That's a widely held view. But and they just get it so well. Then you get to the end. What was it? It was the volume is called Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Is that what it was called? Yeah. And it's basically this showdown where everything happens at the end, and once you get through, actually, you know what? After the first volume, you know what the whole story is. Not the whole story, but you know what they're doing. So it's one of these things where, if you understand anything Cthulhu, everybody dies, everybody goes crazy, the world's destroyed, you're screwed.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a
played,
happy ending in the Cthulhu mythos.
It's just the way it is. You're an ant going against these great old gods, and they totally borked that, and they miss it so bad. And the ending really made me feel dry, but the rest of it was so phenomenal. It was such a great ride to that point, such an amazing ride to that point.
Yep.
All right. Well,
lots of big ideas with this comic.
Yeah.
A lot of big canvas, big ideas, and that's why
New
it's
ideas.
6 volumes. Yeah.
Yeah, the Gray Man, completely new character, but absolutely fit in the Lovecraftian universe. I think August Derleth could have learned something from this guy, from these writers. They just did great. They did a phenomenal job.
cool. I mean, even for people who aren't into Lovecraft, I love the first volume, and I will definitely be reading the rest. So for people who are not familiar with the whole mythology, like where do you start?
If you want to get involved with the mythology,
Yeah.
all of his stuff is free online. So like if you wanna look it up, just like look for his stories. Just look for Cthulhu, because you don't necessarily have to read him in order. If you want to get a book, Probably this one here.
Well, you know what,
Blood-curdling tales of what?
Paul?
Yes.
That one was great when we were just getting into Lovecraft in our teens, because of the internet and because it is it's it's a free license.
Yeah.
You can get the complete works, the complete Lovecraft works from Amazon for like $3.
Kindle. Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
But
Kindle
be careful
for like
what you
$3.
get, because
Everything.
Yeah, you have to read the reviews on the Kindle stuff because it's all like community compiled, so sometimes it errors. But you can usually get a good idea if you look at the reviews.
Or
Here's the
you
thing.
can just find it like on a website too, just to read off there if you want.
Yeah.
Call of Cthulhu is the first Cthulhu story.
Okay.
If you look up any of the stories, you will be able to find it in you will be able to read it in the browser for free because there's like 2 or 3 different websites that compiled his stories. The thing about it is he's incredibly dense. If you've ever read anything, if you've read like Game of Thrones or Dune or anything like that, his writing is thicker than that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredibly thick. It's incredibly. I mean, if you're not into that kind of stuff, get the book on tape, or watch Stuart Gordon's movies,
or get an annotated version.
Yeah. But I mean, this specific story, the specific story that they are alluding to, that they're doing in Fall of Cthulhu, is actually it's a side note in H.P. Lovecraft's story, The Dream Quests of Unknown Kadath, Kadath. I'll link it in the comments here of places to find it.
Okay.
It's basically the story of this guy who finds out about this mountain called Unknown Kadath, and he decides he wants to go see it. So the main villain in Fall of Cthulhu, Nyarlathotep, ends up drugging him in one of his personas. He ends up on a boat, on this flying ship, and flying in the middle of nowhere. It's basically this sightseeing story where he's like, oh, look what I saw, look what I saw. But he also overhears these stories from people he's on the boat with. One of the stories is the story of the battle between Nyarlathotep and Nodens, which is in the second to the last dream sequence. He's talking to the harlot, and there's the guy who's skinning the funky animal, and she says, "Don't go after the hunter. That's Nodens."
Okay.
He hunts. He was hunting things, and they allude to him going, Nyarlathotep going after him for it. And this is basically one of these majorly alluded side stories that he just wrote about 3 or 4 lines about, playing through in a comic book, which if you are a Lovecraft fan, it's freaking cool, because things like this are great. It's like what happened to Boba Fett, in between Cloud City and Jabba the Hutt. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's very similar to that. So yeah.
Cool. All right. So I think that any last thoughts on the book? I think that about wraps it up.
Yep. Go read it. Go get it. Love it.
Definitely. And I was going to ask Sarah her opinion on if we had her intrigued yet, but looks like her internet connection went out, so she got dropped off.
She's back-ish, according to mine, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, since we were going to try and do this in the main segment, but we were running short on time, real quick, it's hard not to mention this. We're a comic book podcast, so you have to mention it. Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was on last night. What did you guys think?
I dug it. Looks like it's going to be like Fringe, but in the Marvel universe, and I'm totally down with that because I really like Fringe. So I'm enjoyed the first episode, and I'm on board for at least the first season. We'll see how it goes.
What did you think, Aaron?
I thought it was going to be more like I think it's going to be more like Heroes.
As long as it's season 1 Heroes and not season 2+ Heroes, we're all good.
Well, we'll see where it goes. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic. We'll say that.
Yeah, I get that.
Cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It was super Whedon-y, but I'm a Joss Whedon super fan, so that was all right by me. Like I had a couple chuckles and a couple big laughs, and although I did think that what's his name? His name's J. August Richards. I thought that he was going to end up being Luke Cage, but he wasn't. I was kind of disappointed at that.
Did they actually have? They didn't actually have Luke. They didn't actually have Nick Fury on there, did they?
No, it was Coulson, Maria Hill, and those are.
Yeah.
I think those are the only two out of like the big Marvel universe that are in there.
Okay, yeah, because I think I fell asleep like after the first ad break because it was so long. I think I may have dozed off and came back. I didn't know if they showed him or not.
Yeah, no, he's not there. I have a feeling they're not going to get some of the bigger stars with their budget unless they do it out of the kindness of their hearts.
Well,
that is true. It is a tie into the movie universe, which is cool.
Yeah.
Which I think is neat.
They'll probably just have them in the background, like footage, like they did with this. They had like Iron Man in the background, like on the monitors from like the news and stuff like that.
Something
like that.
Well, in Iron Man, they could do just Iron Man and throw in a CG suit or whatever. They don't particularly need Robert Downey Jr. or anything. I guess
Right.
same thing with Hulk. But yeah, I'm actually the pilot, it didn't blow me away, but it feels like it has a lot of potential, and so I'm looking forward to where it's going.
Yeah,
Cautiously
me too.
optimistic.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. You summed it up perfectly. So, that I guess that caps our giant size issue for anybody that sticks around. Thanks for watching.
Yep.
I'm sure Sarah will say goodbye too.
Yeah.
The Communicast home on the web is #Communicast on Google+, and cbcpodcast.tumblr.com, where you can find all our episodes in audio or video, as well as links for subscriptions, downloads, and anything else we mentioned on the show. Thanks for joining us, and that's about it.
And next time we'll talk about the Gotham show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that I want to get some more information before we talk about that one.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that. All right. Good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.
All right.